Good evening, everyone. Hello. Welcome to my State of District 2 Town Hall. I'm your Gwinnett County District 2 Commissioner, Ben Koo, and I use he, him pronouns. Centerville is such a vital part of District 2, and we're so glad to be here in this space. As the most unincorporated district, most of you don't have a city to identify with. To make things easier to discuss, I've broken up our district into 3 buckets. So Lucky Shoals, Mountain Park, and Centerville. So Lucky Shoals, I've considered between 85 and Lawrenceville Highway. Mountain Park is between Lawrenceville Highway and Highway 78. And Centerville is everything south of Highway 78. So if you live in District 2, I'd love for you to participate in your local community advisory board, which gives you yet another way to engage with me. So unless you live in the city of Lilburn, which is our only city, you are in one of those kind of unincorporated buckets. But most importantly, thank you for showing up and being here. Civic engagement isn't a spectator sport, and your attendance tonight means everything. We'll also have a Q&A later tonight, and you'll be able to submit questions using the QR code shown on screen and on your agenda. If necessary, if you don't have a phone, don't want to use technology, just raise your hand and someone will come bring you a Post-it note and a pen, and you can write your questions that way, and we'll get it in. Scan that code now and you can start submitting your questions. So tonight is all about collaboration, and I'm grateful to have incredible leadership in this room with us. So our panel members joining me for Q&A a little later tonight include Natasha Tyler, Assistant Director for the Gwinnett County Department of Transportation, Chris Hayward, Assistant Director of Planning and Development, and Deputy Chief Steve Shaw from the Gwinnett County Police Department. We also have several other key county department leaders here this evening, including Jason West, Deputy Director of Community Services, who many of you know from his role as Button Gwinnett, if you've ever gone through Gwinnett 101. Where's Jason? There he is back there. Charlie Roberts, Assistant Director of Water Resources. There we go, thank you. Stuart Oliver, our Chief Appraiser, here. And Rod Adderley, Director of Support Services. Was he here or his assistant? Okay. And finally, I want to recognize our elected officials and their representatives who have joined us tonight. Please welcome State Senator Tanya Anderson and State Representatives Darshan Kendrick and Doreen Carter, District Attorney Patsy Austin Gatson, and Solicitor General Lisa Marie Bristol, Tax Commissioner Denise Mitchell, Eric Hubbard representing Congressman Hank Johnson, and Neil Van Martyr representing Senator John Ossoff. I also have several of my board appointees here who serve on various boards and authorities. So if all of the people I mentioned, including my appointees, please stand to be recognized. Let's give them all a round of applause for their dedicated service to District 2 and Gwinnett County. Thank you so much for being here. So when Chairwoman Hendrickson chose Rooted in Gwinnett as the theme for this year's State of the County, it resonated with me because it's exactly how I describe my own journey. I didn't take the traditional path to this seat. I came from the world of technology, not politics. And I ran because I believed and still believe that real equity means no resident gets left out of the conversation. 7 years in this office and my core principles haven't changed. On the national stage, I serve on multiple technology and innovation committees through NACO, the National Association of Counties, because how governments harness data and technology today will determine how well we serve our communities tomorrow. I'm also engaged in national equity and mental health work because the Gwinnett Standard reaches far beyond roads and budgets. It's about people. That same commitment shapes how I approach accountability. Through Gwinnett's Internal Audit Committee, I help ensure our fiscal house is in order. Gwinnett boasts consistent, clean audits because we believe our residents deserve nothing less than full confidence that your tax dollars are working for you. We hold ourselves to a high bar here, and we keep raising it. In a moment, we'll see an in-depth look at how we're carrying that mission forward. But before we roll the video, I do want to flag a few time-sensitive items. First, voter registration for the May 19th general primary closes Monday, April 20th. That election includes school board and judicial races that will not appear in November. So please don't skip this very, very important election in May. Early voting, I believe, starts April 27th. So there's lots of locations around the county. You can conveniently go and vote early. It's very convenient. This year, we've partnered with Ballot Ready to ensure that candidate information is readily available to each of you. This information is linked from the county website and should be available by the start of early voting. So there will be one source that's trusted that will have bipartisan information of all of the races and all of the candidates that you can vote on. So it's a great, easy way to get all that information. And of course, you can always go to the Secretary of State's mvp.sos.ga.gov to get your specific polling location and your districts for your state house, state senate, et cetera. And you'll eventually be able to have your sample ballot, but the Ballot Ready site will give you a lot more information about candidates if you're looking to do a deeper dive. Second, the deadline to apply for the District 2 seat on the Development Authority of Gwinnett County is Wednesday, April 29th. Okay, I'll give my voice a rest for a moment and let's roll the video. Hello, everyone. I'm Commissioner Ben Ku. Serving the residents of District 2 is truly an honor. And every day we work to deliver the kind of services we all deserve, built on our core values of integrity, accountability, equity, inclusivity, and innovation. There's an energy here that's unlike anywhere else. And in Gwinnett, our vision is clear: to be the preferred community where everyone thrives. Today I want to show you we're bringing that vision to life right here in District 2. District 2 is one of the oldest parts of the county and the most unincorporated. That means for most residents, Gwinnett is their city. When I look at the data, what I see is a community defined by stability and real upward mobility. District 2 is home to nearly 250,000 residents. As of 2025, our median household income is more than $74,000. In the next 5 years, we're projected to exceed $81,000. That's nearly a 10% increase, and it reflects the skill and hard work of the people who call this district home. The strength of District 2 isn't just in our numbers, it's in our people. And equity means making sure every resident can see themselves in their government. We're consistently listed as one of the most diverse counties in the United States of America. We're not just envisioning a vibrantly connected community anymore, we're actively building one, where residents from every walk of life can shape their future. That's what makes this district so special. When we grow, we all grow together. To keep our growth sustainable, Gwinnett is intentional about how we use our land to support the local economy as we celebrate countywide milestones like progress on the Gwinnett Place Mall redevelopment, the arrival of the Rowan Knowledge Community, and the innovation of the new Gateway Gwinnett site. My focus is on turning those wins into real local opportunities for the people of District 2. To support this vision, we're using our Unified Development Ordinance, which encourages high-quality redevelopment while strengthening our neighborhoods. Our roadmap for sustainable growth is our 2045 Unified Plan, ensuring housing options remain within reach through our daily community framework, where all daily needs are within 15 minutes of your front door. A prime example is the Jimmy Carter Boulevard Small Area Plan. This corridor is one of the most culturally vibrant areas in Gwinnett. Over the next 20 years, this plan will guide investments in safe pedestrian pathways, attainable housing, and public art. We're currently in the final refinement phase and expect to officially adopt it this fall, but this plan only works if your voice is in it. We're always looking for community input, and we hope you'll join us for planning meetings open to residents as we continue to improve and plan for the future of this corridor. We're also seeing exciting progress at the former Stone Mountain Tennis Center. The county acquired the site in 2016 to revitalize this major gateway into Gwinnett. Last year, we completed the sale of the site to Fuquay Development, and now it's being transformed into a $200 million mixed-use destination called Mountain Marketplace. Construction has already begun, and I can officially confirm that the new Costco is expected to open later this year. Permits have also been issued for Chick-fil-A and PNC Bank. This project breathes new life into the historic Olympic site, creating an exciting hub for shopping and living at the southern gateway in the heart of District 2. A thriving district also includes spaces where we can gather, play, and connect. That's why we're adding 6 new pickleball courts to Bethesda Park. This project includes new lighting and a pavilion, bringing our countywide total to 30 courts, ensuring Bethesda Park remains a premier destination for our active families and seniors. That momentum is showing up across the entire community. Since 2021, our district has welcomed nearly 120 new businesses and more than 450 new employees. Through Partnership Gwinnett, we've secured nearly $314 million in new capital investment over the past 5 years, creating 555 new jobs and retaining 170 existing ones. We're also becoming a destination for high-growth industries like technology and logistics. Companies like Nidec Aerospace, High Robotics, and the Amazon Robotic Fulfillment Center aren't just investing in Gwinnett.
they're investing in us, the talent of our workforce, and the potential of our neighbors. And by planning smart today, we're making sure District 2 remains a thriving place to live, work, and grow for years to come. A commitment to safety is a commitment to quality growth. Families and businesses choose Gwinnett because they feel secure, and that security is what allows our neighborhoods to flourish. But this work comes with real weight. We're reminded of that when we think about the sacrifices made by those who wear the badge. We honor that service by ensuring our support for those who protect us remains unwavering. That's why providing our responders with superior tools and training is a responsibility we take seriously. Take our Community Service Aid program. Since launching last summer, 6 aides have handled more than 1,000 calls. The results speak for themselves. We've seen faster response times and officers free to focus on high-priority calls and crime prevention. We're also staying ahead of threats through our Situational Awareness and Crime Response Center. This facility combines county infrastructure cameras, Flock license plate recognition cameras, and the Gwinnett Safe Communities program, where residents and businesses can voluntarily share their private camera footage during active emergencies. Together, these give our analysts real-time eyes on any situation. Over the past year, we've added more than 1,100 Flock cameras countywide, and Gwinnett retains full control over all data, so your privacy is always protected. These tools help Gwinnett maintain its standing in the top 12% of the safest counties in the nation. We've also authorized next-generation 911 technology expected to fully roll out by early 2027. This will allow us to process information with even greater speed and precision, building on our current success in reducing wait times. In the past 3 years, we've reduced average 911 hold times from more than 1 minute to less than 3 seconds. We're also launching a police drone program, giving first responders situational awareness from the air. This allows them to quickly assess dangerous scenes before they arrive. Our fire and EMS teams also continue to strengthen our community through preventative hands-only CPR training and home safety surveys. Thanks to SPLOST funding, we'll be rebuilding and relocating fire stations 2, 3, and 14 in the coming years. This expands capacity and helps us keep pace with our growing community. The southwest parts of our county carry more legacy infrastructure, and it's our job to bring them up to the Gwinnett standard. By investing in the best technology and the best people, we're building a safer Gwinnett and a more connected one. That connection starts with making sure every resident can get where they need to go. Gwinnett is proud to be the first county in Georgia to launch the Mobility and Access Planning App, or GMAP. This is a game changer for our seniors, individuals with disabilities, and anyone who uses public transit. With GMAP, residents can plan routes that account for specific mobility needs, like sidewalk ramps or elevators, so they can avoid obstacles and travel with greater independence. Whether you're navigating the shops along Jimmy Carter or heading to an appointment in Centerville, this technology makes sure our infrastructure works for everyone. Our digital upgrades also go hand in hand with improvements on the ground. By late 2026, we'll complete a major safety project at the intersection of Rockbridge and Wydella Road. In addition to a new traffic signal and turn lanes, we're installing new sidewalks, curbs, and gutters. This is just one example of how the board is prioritizing transportation and safety across the county, particularly in District 2. Last fall, we've approved several major contracts to modernize intersections and replace aging infrastructure. This includes our work to widen Beaver Ruin Road from I-85 to Park Drive. In partnership with the Gateway 85 CID, we're widening the road to 3 lanes and adding turn lanes at the I-85 on-ramp. These improvements at Steve Reynolds Road and Shackelford Road will help clear traffic and get you onto the highway faster. And to ensure our neighborhood streets are just as smooth as our main corridors, we're beginning a $43 million SPLOST-funded project to resurface 181 miles of residential roads countywide. Because when we invest in our roads, we're investing in the quality of life for every resident who uses them. For the latest route maps, microtransit zone updates, and service schedules, visit gwinnettransportation.com. I want to leave you with this. Our community is at its strongest when you stay involved. Whether you serve on a local board or cast your ballot, your voice matters, and it shapes the future of this county. I'm always looking for good people to serve on boards and committees. You can find all these opportunities at gwinnettcounty.com/apply-to-serve. 2026 is also an election year with multiple elections to weigh in on. Make sure you're registered and that your voice is heard. You can get full details on polling locations, advanced voting, and absentee ballots at gwinettelections.com. To stay up to date on what's new in District 2, subscribe to my monthly newsletter, and find board openings, go to gwinnettcounty.com/district2. You can also join me for a deeper dive on my podcast, Conversations with Koo, available on your favorite streaming platform. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, stay vibrantly connected, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much to our staff for putting together that wonderful video for me. All right, so with that, I'm going to introduce our leadership panel. You've all heard it in the video. We have a lot of incredible initiatives and projects going on. And I have a fresh update to share that's even better than the video you just saw. At the time of recording, I mentioned that the safety project at Rockbridge and Wydella Road would have been done by late 2026. Well, actually, I'm thrilled to share that our team beat that timeline and that intersection is already open to traffic and substantially complete today. So that is the state of District 2, where we're proud of being rooted in Gwinnett, delivering superior results for our residents, often ahead of schedule. Now, at this point tonight, I want to continue to engage and hear your thoughts and questions. To help with that, I'm joined by members of our county leadership team. Please help me to welcome Natasha Tyler again, Assistant Director of the Gwinnett County Department of Transportation, Chris Hayward, Assistant Director of Planning and Development, and Deputy Chief Steve Shaw from the Gwinnett County Police Department. To make the most of our shared time tonight, we'll be going through your submitted questions that are commonly asked and general. If we don't get to your question tonight in this segment, we will get back to you if you included your email, or we may address it in my newsletter or my podcast. And staff and I will be available afterwards to discuss any non-general or specific questions that you may have. I know a lot of you are here because of specific zoning cases. Yeah. So I legally have to say some things, so please bear with me. State law and our county's own development ordinance require that zoning matters go through a formal public process, including public hearings before the Planning Commission, which I have two of my planning commissioners here, and the full Board of Commissioners. I am legally prohibited from taking any position on any zoning cases before that public hearing, so we will not be answering any case-specific questions in this forum. And that is why I have not made any public opinion one way or the other on these matters. And anyone who claims that I've taken a position one way or another is spreading misinformation. Another point of confusion I'd like to clear up is that there are no pending or active rezoning cases directly adjacent to the Yellow River Game Ranch. There is a zoning matter for a parcel that is separated from the game ranch by two other parcels. I do appreciate your feedback, and I encourage you to continue to send respectful emails to the board with your thoughts, particularly in regards to relevant information based on the zoning standards for any zoning case. For example, the types of questions I will be asking is, what is the plan? What will the impact be on the surrounding community? How will this impact the businesses of the Yellow River Game Ranch? How do they plan on addressing the limited access issues? So those are the types of questions that are zoning related that may come up, and those are great things. If you have feedback along those or answers to those questions, I'd love to hear those. However, social media is not a productive forum for discussion. I strongly encourage you to be part of the official public record and by coming to the official public meetings so your voice can be heard. If you have general questions about the zoning process, we are happy to discuss that without discussing specific cases in this forum. So thank you for being here tonight, and I know there's plenty to talk about. We've already received several thoughtful questions this evening. Feel free to continue to scan the QR code on screen and on your printed agenda, and continue to submit questions as we go during this discussion. Again, if we aren't able to get to your question, please know we will all be available afterwards to continue the conversation with you directly. So at this point, I'm going to grab one of the questions, and I think the first one I'd like to discuss is there are some questions about the date of the Planning Commission hearing and the date of the Board of Commissioners meeting for a specific zoning, but I will actually let Chris Hayward take this question and tell us what is the actual facts and what do we know.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So we have, I believe the rezoning we're talking about is the one nearby the Yellow River Game Ranch or Animal Sanctuary. And we have received an application for rezoning on this property. Our staff has been going through it. We have not at this time written a case report. It has not been formally placed on an agenda at this time. So it appears that everything's going to be ready to go on the June Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners public hearings, but until that's advertised, until, it's formally noticed, right, then that's not going to be official. So that's the best information that we have right now, that I'll have the specific dates in front of me. We're looking at June 2nd for the Planning Commission meeting and June 23rd for the Board of Commissioners meeting. But definitely keep up with those agendas. You can go to on GwinnettCounty.com, the Planning Commission page, the Board of Commissioners page, to be able to review those public hearing agendas. And we also have a layer for those that ever get on our GIS system where you can actually look at active rezoning cases. There's a layer on there. Anybody that wants to talk about that, I can talk afterwards, show you how to do that. But it's an easy way to keep up with anything that's going on in your area, and you can keep up with when those Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners hearing dates are scheduled as well.
Because that one is not fully submitted and completed, so it hasn't been scheduled. So this is just what we're thinking, because we don't actually have that information at this time. It's not that we're hiding it from anybody, it's just we don't have the information. Kind of a follow-up question, since we're talking about it. Why is that specific development, the question is, why is it given priority over competing developments? I think I know the answer. It's really not that we're giving priority. We get zoning applications all the time, constantly throughout the year at the county. And so this one is what's on the agenda, it's in the queue.
Yeah, we don't make a decision in terms of, there we go, okay. Maybe it's switching between, so we don't get feedback, so that makes sense. So yeah, we don't decide what rezonings private property owners submit to us. Anyone has the right to request whatever rezoning they would like on a property, but that doesn't mean that we at the staff level are going to recommend approval. It doesn't mean that the Planning Commission will recommend approval. It doesn't mean the Board of Commissioners will eventually approve it, but anyone does have the right with their property to come to Gwinnett County and say, hey, I have an idea for my property and this is what I want to do. And then we, at the staff level, take a look at that objectively and see if it's appropriate. And then it goes through Planning Commission for a recommendation and to the Board of Commissioners for a decision.
So,
yeah, please. This might be easier.
yeah, we'll just share. You've kind of given a good overview of the process. Are there any more details you can give about that process for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to expand on that a little bit more, so whenever we receive an application initially, the first thing that we do is make sure that all required documents are included, that they've provided property owner consent, that they have sewer capacity certification to show that if sewer is required for the project, that they do have that. For at a certain threshold, they have to provide a traffic impact study. So a lot of things that need to be included with that packet. So once we've determined that an application is complete, then we'll start writing a case report. And that's where, at the staff level, our team looks at, is this an appropriate use based on our 2045 Unified Plan, which Commissioner Koo mentioned earlier in the video, right? This is our sort of future visionary document for land use in Gwinnett County. So that's the first thing that we're gonna look at is this proposal that they're making, is it appropriate based on that future land use map and based on our 2045 Unified Plan? We'll also look at the surrounding uses and see, is this appropriate? Is this compatible with the surrounding zonings in that area? We'll take a look at what's the impact on the surrounding community generally as it relates to infrastructure. We partner with several different departments within the county, like the Department of Water Resources, the Department of Transportation. They take a look at this as well to see, okay, what's the impact on Gwinnett County infrastructure? Is there sufficient infrastructure to support that project, right? So there are a lot of different levels that we're looking at this in coming up with a recommendation on whether or not any rezoning that's proposed throughout Gwinnett County is appropriate in that location. And so once we've made that determination at the staff level, we finalize that case report. It includes a recommendation. And along with that recommendation, you'll see conditions typically. And sometimes those conditions, maybe a use is appropriate, but maybe there's an issue with one part where maybe there are some conditions that are needed to mitigate the impact on some surrounding neighbors. And so you may see conditions where it's an added buffer next to a certain neighbor to make sure that there's a lesser impact. Maybe it's an appropriate use there, but you need a little bit more buffer between a surrounding use to lessen that impact on the neighbor. So that would be one example of a potential condition, right? So We look at potential conditions to mitigate those surrounding impacts, and finalize that case report. And then once that case report's concluded, that includes a staff recommendation, that includes any recommended conditions, then it goes to a public hearing at the Planning Commission. And at the Planning Commission, they will have as I mentioned, it's a public hearing. It's open for anybody to come, and whether they're in support or opposition to a given rezoning, and each side gets 10 minutes. So the applicant would get 10 minutes to talk about the project, and any opposition to the project gets 10 minutes to talk about why they don't think that that's appropriate. So based on that information, the Planning Commission has an opportunity to ask questions, and then they make a recommendation. So the Planning Commission votes to recommend either approval or denial, and then the Planning Commission can also attach conditions. They can either agree with staff conditions, or they can modify those conditions to make them stronger or looser. So from there, then it goes to a public hearing before the Board of Commissioners, where the same type of process happens, where you have that applicant getting 10 minutes, you have any opposition getting 10 minutes, and then ultimately the Board of Commissioners makes the final determination on whether to approve or deny the rezoning. And then again, they have the opportunity to change those conditions to either reflect what staff recommended initially for the conditions, to go with what the Planning Commission recommended, or to change them entirely.
Thank you. Very thorough answer. Hopefully that addresses I think that covers multiple questions that we got. So this one is probably good for Transportation Department. How do sidewalks get determined and assigned and prioritized?
That is a good question for transportation. So with our sidewalk projects, our sidewalk is a part of our SPLOST program. And so just kind of similar to how it was mentioned for the Planning Commission, when you go through the SPLOST program, we do have a SPLOST Citizens Committee. And so we look at the areas that of our concern throughout the entire county, and then things are ranked based off of the funding that is available for those projects. So it is a collaboration between the Citizens Committee as well as the commissioners to be able to list those projects for future SPLOST or the current SPLOST that we have.
Thank you very much. Next question, it's back to planning, without talking about any specific zoning cases, but in general, how does staff make recommendations when it comes to a zoning case?
Definitely, thank you. So when we're taking a look at a given rezoning that's, any rezoning, as I mentioned, the first thing that we're gonna look at is the 2045 plan and the future development map for Gwinnett County, just to see what's recommended in that area. So is the zoning that's being proposed on this property consistent with the zonings that we would typically see as reflected in our future land use plan? So that's a big piece of it. We also look at those surrounding uses to see what's immediately surrounding it. So obviously if somebody's, trying to put a factory in right next to, a single family home, that may be an incompatible use that we want to take a look at, right? Independent of what the unified plan says. We also want to look at, the impact on infrastructure, as I mentioned, partnering with Department of Water Resources, Department of Transportation, to take a look at, get their feedback on, how it impacts what they're looking at. And then also, one of the standards is there an appropriate economic use of the property currently? So when they come to us, that's one of the things that they have to justify to say, is there an appropriate use? Is there an economically viable use of the property as zoned currently that would, and if not, does that justify this rezoning? So we have several standards that we look at as we're looking at making a recommendation to approve or deny a project.
Thank you. All right, our next question, I think would be for our police department. Have there been any ICE detainments in the district, and if so, how many?
So I think one of the major misconceptions about local law enforcement is that we have immigration enforcement powers, and we don't. We are in the position to where we do not participate in any direct immigration enforcement operations. We do have officers that are assigned to some of our federal task forces. And if in the course of their investigations with the ATF, the DEA, the FBI, immigration status becomes a role as a subsidiary of a major crime, then yes, we are a part of that. But as for directed immigration-only enforcement, Gwinnett County Police Department does not operate in any capacity with that. In addition to that, we are by law required to ask for a status of anybody that we have contact with, whether we issue them a citation, whether we detain them, whether we commit a custodial arrest of them. We are required by law to ask them what their status is in this country. That is basically a box on a report that we fill out. We take no enforcement action. We don't issue citations. We don't make a decision to arrest or provide warnings or citations based off of the answer to that question. So by and large, for the Gwinnett County Police Department, we are not directly or actively involved in any immigration enforcement whatsoever because we just don't possess the authority. And it becomes challenging for us, for those communities that have the fear of law enforcement, because if crimes go unreported to us because they're afraid to contact the police based on where they're from, the culture where they're from, that creates extremely poor challenges or tough challenges for us, because when we don't see patterns of crime because people are afraid to contact us, it becomes problematic for us, because when we do solve crimes, we then find out that there are multiple victims that just were too afraid to call us. So we do our best as a police department to try and message that out, but by and large, we are not involved in any immigration actions whatsoever.
Thank you. The next question is a planning one. Is there currently any discussion or plan to limit additional gas station convenience stores in Gwinnett? And so I'll actually take this one. I'm with you. I understand that there has been a proliferation of gas stations. So what we did is a few years ago, we put in an UDO update that basically required any new gas station in the county to get approval from the Board of Commissioners specifically for that use. So any new gas stations have to come before us through that zoning process that Chris so eloquently described in detail. They would have to go through that whole process. It doesn't mean that we're prohibiting it, but again, it gives us all an opportunity to weigh in, see if this actually makes sense for the community. Is there economic use as currently zoned, et cetera. And so a lot of the gas stations that I know we are seeing shovels in the ground and gas stations being built, a lot of those were pushed right up under the gun right before the new UDO went into effect. And so unfortunately, they are grandfathered in, and we can't just tell a business, hey, you own this property, but you can't operate here anymore. Just like any business, we couldn't just say, hey, we don't like what you're doing, move. So the property owners have rights, and so hopefully the new UDO changes will stem the tide of all these new gas stations, because my personal opinion is that I think we've got enough gas stations in the county. The next question is probably related to the new development at the Olympic Tennis Center. Are big box stores being taxed appropriately for the opportunity cost having them in our communities? And the short answer is yes. That development particularly is within a tax allocation district, which means that a lot of the money that's generated from that specific parcel must be reinvested back into that community. So it allows us to capture those dollars and keep it in the community. And I don't believe they had any tax incentives to build that property. So they are taxed at the normal rate as a commercial business, plus there's sales taxes that come in from that. So there is a lot of money that will be coming back to the county, and that can be reinvested in that area. And even from the sale of that property, we've actually taken that money and reinvested it. We've spent, I think, close to $1 million on a master plan for the area. We've used those funds to purchase additional properties in the area to make sure that we have a hand in how that is redeveloped. A lot of the property in Gwinnett County, we have no say in how it's developed, other than the zoning of whether something can or cannot be. And we can use that zoning to kind of encourage what we want, but unless we actually own the property, we only have so much control. But when we own the property, we have a lot of control of saying, this is what we want to see happen here. This is how we want it to develop. And we can go out and find developers who are willing to actually implement that vision that we have. So that is a great opportunity in District 2 to really get the Southern Gateway into the county developed. This question, next question is zoning specific, but I'm actually going to reword it a little bit. So when there are conditions placed on a zoning and approved by the Board of Commissioners, how are those conditions enforced, and how can our residents help ensure that those conditions are met?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So there's several layers to this, right? So the first piece of it is when a property is being developed. So when they come to us, they're going to submit plans. They're going to be development plans, and then they're going to be building plans. So when our team looks at it, we check those conditions of zoning, and we make sure that those development plans and that those building plans comply with those conditions of zoning. And same thing with when we inspect the property. So whenever that project is being developed, we make sure that those buffers, the landscaping is in place. If there was a fence that's required, the fence is installed. If there are facades that need to be a certain percentage of brick or whatever material, we check that throughout the process. So our inspectors, our plan reviewers check for new developments to make sure that those conditions are being met. So that's the first piece of it, but the second piece of it is actually after it's, the building is constructed, the development opens. We need to stay on top of that too. And so that's where code enforcement gets involved. And so if there's an issue where somebody, after our building inspectors, development inspectors are gone, a certificate of occupancy has been issued, the business is open, but they fundamentally changed something either in how they're operating or how the landscaping's in place or whatever they may do to where it doesn't meet those conditions of zoning, then code enforcement is able to issue them a notice of violation, which is really a fancy way of saying an official warning, right? Or if they don't comply promptly, then we're able to issue citations to recorder's court. So those are kind of the different levels of how we check and make sure that it's in place. I will say, if as a resident, if you ever see, whether it's during the development phase, it's during the building construction process, or if it's after a business is open and you have concerns that what you saw during the public process and the conditions that were agreed upon by the applicant that were approved by the Board of Commissioners are not being met, then certainly reach out to us. So you can either go on our county's ZIP portal, that's zoning inspections and permitting portal. You can reach out to us at planning and development, and we can get somebody out there and make sure that those conditions are being met.
These are great questions, you guys. This is wonderful because every time I have a podcast, I ask for people to submit your questions and feedback so we can engage and answer them. We haven't had anybody write us from the podcast, but you guys got lots of questions here, and there's some really good questions. Anyways, I'll get back to it. So this is an interesting question. How do the priorities outlined by the BOC align with community safety and crime? And there's an addendum in particular. How does the Solicitor General's office stay in alignment with those priorities? And thankfully, we actually have our Solicitor General here. I'm just going to invite her up to answer this question if you would like. That's fine.
I think Mr. Coleman has one.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Coleman has a mic right there for you.
Okay, hi, good evening. Always come prepared.
Put you on the spot.
I'm Lisa Marie Bristol. I'm your Solicitor General. It's an honor to serve you. My office is responsible for handling all of the misdemeanors, code enforcement, traffic violations, so we are very high volume. Working with the Board of Commissioners is really important. There's a couple of key things I think we've heard from Commissioner Koo throughout the evening about how they prioritize things like technology. I've heard us talk about technology and digital access. My office built a new website to make sure all of the information about how to go through the court system, how to navigate when you have a ticket, what do you do if you're the victim of a crime and you need resources? All of those can be found on our website, our GwinnettSG.com website. We also made sure that we've increased our access to justice. So what does that mean? Not only being more informative, holding more community outreach events, we go out to the high schools and talk to the young people about options for them and give them resources. That's something that's important. And being better together, which I think is one of the greater things here in Gwinnett. We work really hard to bring together agencies throughout the community. Gwinnett is a beautifully diverse community. We have so many great things happening here, but it's really easy to forget maybe what's going on in Norcross if you live up in Sugar Hill. So one of the things that my office does prioritize is bringing the different agencies together that do different things, whether it's victim services, resources, crime prevention, education, and particularly at like my annual 5K, or we find opportunities to make sure we can come together under one umbrella to share that information, because a lot of times people just don't know what their options are. I think all of these align with us having a thriving community where we can live, work, and play, and make sure that everyone feels comfortable, knows if they have a problem, if they have a question, they can go to Deputy Chief Shaw. They can contact my office. Our office is always open and available, and we have a 24-hour contact option. I hope that answers the question.
I think that does, and I think the first part of the question I can answer, like it was asking about how do the priorities outlined by the BOC align with the community safety and crime, and one of our strategic priorities is public safety, so that it's very much in line, making sure everybody is safe and secure here. Again, I'm so happy about our 911 hold times getting down to close to 2 seconds now. It's just good work from all of our staff and team. We have amazing staff here at the county. The next question is, when a property is listed for sale, does the owner of the property next to it get notified of application to rezone? If not, why not?
Yes, so one of the requirements of any rezoning is to notify any resident, any property owners within 1,000 feet of that property. So if a property next to yours is applying for a rezoning, you should receive a letter. And we validate those lists of addresses through our GIS system. And so, yes, there is a notification that goes out to inform adjacent property owners, not only of the upcoming rezoning, but also if there's going to be a public participation meeting, which is typically required for rezonings at this point. So we now require the applicant to host a meeting with the public to really kind of vet out the project and get feedback on the project before it even goes through the process that we talked about earlier.
And that's new, right?
It is, absolutely. That was something that the Board of Commissioners adopted with that UDO update that Commissioner Koo was talking about earlier.
Yes, that is something that we knew that the process needed more engagement earlier on in the process when there was time to move things. And so I'm very happy that that's now a requirement at the UDO. And so all cases require that public participation. The next question, I do know the answer, but I will let you answer it. Is Gwinnett County under a 287G agreement?
The Gwinnett County Police Department is not. I know that there have been times where the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office has participated in that program. I'm not sure of the current status of that, but essentially what that means is that they will embed Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Officer within the jail to monitor detainees on their status and take enforcement action if they deem that necessary. For the Gwinnett County Police Department, we are not involved in that capacity whatsoever.
And I can speak to the historical involvement. When I was first elected, before I was elected, the county was annually doing a memorandum of understanding with the Sheriff's Department authorizing that 287G agreement. After I was elected, that never came to the Board of Commissioners again, interestingly enough. And then after 2020, when we got our new sheriff was elected, he ended that program and that participation. So I do not, as far as I know, we are no longer under a 287G agreement. Next question is, does zoning give a priority to the 2045 plan to the compatibility of local businesses?
I would say this is going back to the question earlier too, right? When we're taking a look at whether a proposed rezoning is appropriate, really one of the first things that we look at is the 2045 Unified Plan. And a big piece of that is looking at the appropriateness in light of surrounding uses. And so, you know, a big part of the 2045 plan is looking at, for a given area, what are the types of zonings that would be appropriate? And so what you're typically not going to see is a mix of uses that wouldn't go well together. Now, part of that, as I mentioned earlier, is also us taking a look at it, not just defaulting to the plan and saying, okay, these are all the potential zonings that are appropriate in this specific area, but also to specifically look at what's actually out there. Not just what the unified plan says, but what's out there, what's been constructed, and what's appropriate. So absolutely, we look at what's appropriate for a given rezoning in light of the surrounding uses, businesses, residents, whatever is out there.
Thank you. What is the process for food vendors using gas stations or other businesses' lots, parking lots to sell their items?
So we do have a process to obtain a temporary outdoor activity permit where people can come in, and that's typically for sort of a short term, like, you know, festival in a parking lot, if you want to have a food truck at your business, different things like that. I don't think that's what this question is asking. But I wanted to say there is a lawful way to go about it. Generally speaking, somebody selling food out of, you know, under a tent in a parking lot is not a permitted use in Gwinnett County. And so that would be something that code enforcement can address. We do work closely with the police department on that as well, especially in certain parts of the county where we see more of that. Really, we lean into education first in that situation to talk about, you know, what's the process to be able to get licensed, what is allowed in the county. But generally speaking, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, I'm personally very sympathetic, right? I mean, a lot of times can get good food, you know, from, you know, a tent to a gas station. But, you know, there are a lot of businesses that go through the process, right? I mean, they have their health inspections, they have their business license, they do things the right way. And when somebody sets up, you know, with, you know, a pop-up tent in the parking lot, it takes business away from the people that are doing the right thing. And so again, we lean into education first to let people know what is allowed and isn't allowed. We're not trying to go out and drop the hammer on somebody trying to make a few bucks over the weekend, but if they're persistent, then that does become an enforcement issue, and we follow up on it and work to bring them into compliance.
So this question, I'm not sure if it came in, when it came in, but somebody's still confused on how and when the community can formally provide input for conditions on new development. And I think from what Chris has said, the initial public meeting, that's a great time for you to get with the developer to have them voluntarily add conditions to new developments. And then all through that process from that point forward, you can submit your feedback and thoughts to staff, and they will take that into consideration. You can voice it if you get engaged at a planning commission meeting or again at the Board of Commissioners meeting. And there was another question about.
Do you mind if I mention something real quick
Please.
on that? Yeah, I did just want to touch on that briefly because I know sometimes, especially in this type of forum, people can get a little disillusioned sometimes about the process. I will say at that public input meeting with the developer, we've seen people come out of that sometimes and they come to us and they change their application because a whole lot of people show up and they say, these are our concerns, this is what we want to see from you. And they'll change their plans. It doesn't happen every time, but they do sometimes. They say, okay, we know that we're gonna run into a wall once this gets to the public hearing process, so we're gonna go ahead and start making some concessions on that. So please, as Commissioner Koo mentioned, make sure to participate in that if you're passionate about it, if you're interested in the project, show up, express your concerns, and just participate throughout the process, because it can really make a difference.
So that's great if you have ideas for conditions or something concrete or tangible. What about just general outrage? You know, like if people are upset, how is that incorporated into the process at the various levels? I know there's certain things that staff has to focus on legal requirements for the thing. I think the Board of Commissioners has a little more leniency to take that into consideration. But I think at the end of the day, it's the facts and the merits, the standards that we have to go by legally.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, I'll say definitely from a staff level, we're not considering what, we're not considering public opinion or public input. That's not part of our process. We're explicitly looking at the facts of the case, as Commissioner Koo said. We're looking at the land use plan. We're looking at, applicable law. We're looking at impacts on infrastructure. We're looking at all the standards that are in front of us. So that's our piece of it when we're writing that case report is purely objective. We
But
try to
that's
be neutral.
not to say that if you have opinions and thoughts and feedback that is based on those standards, that we're not gonna listen to it.
Yes, absolutely, and I'm sorry, I just to be totally clear, I'm talking about from a staff perspective and when writing that report, because, we're not gonna be, we don't have public hearings, we don't have anything like that. But it's once you get past the staff piece and you get to the planning commission and you get to the board of commissioners, that's where your feedback becomes so important and where you need to share that and where the planning commission, the board of commissioners can take that feedback and incorporate that potentially into conditions to mitigate potential impacts on you.
And I've also worked with the developers trying to find win-wins to bridge what the community wants and what the developer wants to do to make money, and find those happy mediums. And most of the developers are actually quite reasonable and willing to change their plans to adapt to various needs, making different conditions, changing the product type and the mix and various, they're willing to self-impose certain conditions where it makes sense, where it helps the community. So most of the time, that initial developer meeting is a great opportunity to talk with that developer and get a lot of that feedback and your concerns heard in a way that actually impacts the final product and the final case. So this, I think, it was a pretty simple question. For transportation, does the county plan on putting red lights at both ends of Oleander? Are there any current plans for that?
We hear about red lights a lot. So, so currently, we do not have plans to put red lights at both ends of Oleander, but we are, actually, we do have a study in that area to determine what our next traffic calming measures are going to be. And so whoever asks that question, I would be more than happy to discuss in more detail after.
And is that true of like any new development when we're looking at increases of traffic and changes to situation and land use and stuff like that? How does the county address the changes in volumes of traffic effectively?
That's a good question. And so what we do is we look at our traffic studies. And so sometimes I know if a new development is brought out, we can look at what the impact is going to be. And so like Chris said, we work with planning and development to really be able to do those impact studies. But another thing that we do is once the development goes up, we still continue to monitor that. We wait to see once the traffic patterns stabilize, and then we do go back and do traffic studies to be able to show, okay, we do need to add other traffic calming measures, or it could be a traffic signal, it could be a roundabout, depending on where it is. So that is something that our team continuously looks at to make sure that we have the right safety improvements that are needed to kind of go with that development.
And so that applies for any area, because there's several questions that were all like, what are you gonna do about speeding on this road or this road? So there's a lot of specific questions I kind of grouped together, but feel free to reach out to my office, directly to transportation if you want. We're putting together a new beta, and you guys are all the first to hear about it officially. If you email district2, the number 2, at GwinnettCounty.com, it'll create a ticket, and it'll immediately give you a reply email, and you will be able to log into a website to actually see the staff's response, and you can add pictures and do all sorts of stuff, and so that way you don't feel like it's just going into a black hole, because I know often when we email people that we have no idea if they got it, if they're gonna look at it, when we're gonna hear back from them, and so this new system should give a little bit more transparency and insight to allow people to see, okay, where are things in the process, how can we keep things moving along, and on our end, we can hand it off to different departments to reply. So I'd love for everyone to start trying to use it, and if you
it gets too much and break the system, that's good data to have. So please bear with us if there are any issues. It is in beta, but please try that out. The next question is, I think this is also similar to the following. So one's asking, who is the city planner overseeing a particular development? There's also a question about what is the new development as a particular place. So how do people find out about development when people see shovels in the ground and construction equipment? For all questions, people can always reach out to my office again if they need to. But is there a way that people can find out that information for themselves about developments and permits and things that are going on?
Yeah, definitely. So we do have that zoning inspections and permitting portal that I mentioned earlier, where you can look up any given address or parcel ID and try to find out whether there's a building permit that's currently active or a development permit that's currently active or a rezoning case. As I mentioned, to me, for searching for rezonings, it's a little bit easier to go onto that GIS browser that we have available on our website. But you can find it as well through that ZIP portal. One of the tricky things on it is that, especially for a development permit, for rezoning, a lot of times it's tied to the parcel ID, which not everybody knows. Building permits can be a little bit easier, but when in doubt, if you see something going on, you're not sure, what it is, you want to know more about it, as Commissioner Koo mentioned, obviously, his office is open to receiving those inquiries, but you can reach out to our department too. Gwinnett County Planning and Development online, we have our organization page. Really, any of our division directors can help out with it. I can help out with it, but our development division would be over, anything development related, building division, obviously anything building related. And we have a general customer support line too, where you can call in and just ask for the status of what's going on with a given property, and they'll be able to help you out with that. So either calling our general line, emailing our general email, we'll get you the information that you need.
All right, this is kind of a bit of a loaded question, but is it true that school overcrowding and increased traffic congestion have no bearing or weight in rezoning requests, approvals, or denials? Get the legal answer.
Yeah, I mean, we have standards that we look at, including impact on infrastructure. So we certainly do, look at the impact on infrastructure, on the surrounding community. But ultimately, I mean, a lot of times it ends up being kind of a reactive process in terms of, the school. We coordinate closely with the planning department at Gwinnett County Public Schools. So they have a sense of what's coming through the rezoning process, what kind of development's coming through. And so they're fully aware of kind of what that pipeline is, that future pipeline for schools. I do think that rate of increase has decreased for Gwinnett County Public Schools overall over the last few years. And so I'm not sure, I know it's different in different parts of the county and has to be weighed individually based on those clusters. But I do think that overall sort of trajectory and rate of increase has changed in recent years. But yeah, we coordinate, not to continue to say the same thing, but we work so closely with the Department of Transportation, and we actually have even set up within our department an infrastructure planning division that is really just dedicated to making sure that working with all the departments in the county to ensure that as we're planning future infrastructure needs, that is informed by our land use decisions and our land use plan, so that we don't have anybody making these plans in a vacuum saying, okay, we think we need this much sewer capacity in the next 20 years, while on the other side we're looking and saying, okay, this is an area designated for significant growth because we're I have a major redevelopment project in that area. So I think the coordination right now is better than it's ever been, and it's going to continue to help ensure that that future construction that's needed on infrastructure, future planning on the school side is really informed by what's actually happening on the ground.
All right, I think we're going to do two more questions in the interest of time. There's so many good questions, but we will either bring it up on the podcast or we'll email you back if you've got an email there. Yes, thank you so much for all the great engagement. I love it. With the worsening effects of climate change, what avenues is Gwinnett County pursuing to improve the resilience of our community? Directions including wider public transit, denser housing, passive cooling materials like light-colored roof tiles, microtransit, such as programs to provide rebates for local bike purchases, etc. So I will start with you, and then I think there's a planning piece to that.
Okay, so from looking at transportation in a transit perspective, so with the transportation perspective, we are always continuously looking at the impact. We do a comprehensive transportation study so that we can look at the future of what Gwinnett County will be. From a transit perspective, we do also look at how can we provide mobility? How can we continue to provide connectivity for the residents of Gwinnett County? The biggest answer to that is funding plays a big role. And so for transit, as we look at the future of what it could be, we did previously, the board adopted a transit development plan. We are still looking at projects that are a part of that plan, just so that as funding becomes available, as more partnerships become available, grant funding becomes available, that we are able to move forward on those projects to be able to provide better connectivity.
And then what about, as far as development goes, how are we encouraging more sustainable developments? Sorry.
Oh, I got it. Definitely. So we do, one thing that we've changed as part of that really large scale update to our Unified Development Ordinance is really kind of getting away from, for the longest time, it was an emphasis on how much parking do you have? How much parking can you get? You see some of these areas of the county, so much parking out there. We went from really emphasizing nothing but minimums to starting to impose some maximums on parking. So that's one thing that can have a really big impact in this area. Requiring EV charging stations, even bicycle parking. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. Really also making it easier for people to install solar panels if they want to use that as an alternative to try to either return it to the grid or provide that electricity on site. So there are several ways that we've updated our codes to try to incentivize and make it easier to build and develop in a green way.
And then we'll end with a fairly simple question. How much time or how many days prior to the meeting do you provide when publishing those meeting dates?
Yeah, so I believe the state law requirement is that it can't be closer than 15 days or further than 45 days out. And so that's when the sort of official legal notice will go out. So typically you're looking at about that time frame where you'll officially be notified about it. But I know there's been so much interest around it, I suspect that there's going to be information, put out there. So
But then legally, we can't do it earlier than 45 days before the meeting.
correct, yes.
So, well, that was great. And that concludes the Q&A portion for this evening. Thank you all again for your thoughtful questions and for joining us tonight. Your engagement is what keeps Gwinnett vibrantly connected and moving forward. On your way out, please visit our outreach tables if you haven't already. Voter registrations and elections is here. Gwinnett Safe Communities, Ride Gwinnett, Department of Water Resources, with our best tasting water in Georgia, and the tax commissioner's office all have good information to take home with you. Myself and county leadership will also be around until 8 p.m. to answer any individual questions you might have. If you didn't get your question answered and you just really want it, just come find one of us and we can have a discussion. Have a safe trip home, and remember, stay vibrantly connected, and I'll talk to you soon.